What is up, everyone? How's everyone doing out there today? Welcome back to Wildcat MTG, and happy pre-release Friday. It's time for Murders at Karlov Manor. We get a sweet new set with a whole host of new cards to talk about, which means I get to talk about my top 10 cards that I'm most excited about. And so as we go through my list of cards, I want to again preface that by saying it's cards that I'm most excited about. We're not necessarily talking about the most valuable cards. We're not necessarily talking about the most powerful cards, because I think that's really, subjective depending on format that you're talking about. But instead, I just keep it to the list of cards that I personally am excited to get to try out and put into decks and see how they play. I think one of the really cool things about this set is that while there's obviously some really awesome mythics and some really awesome rares, this set really brings a lot of power at the common and uncommon level. The uncommon level is chock full of good cards that I think are going to see play. And so I'm even going to start with that with my number 10 card. So at number 10, I have Vengeful Tracker. This is one colorless and one red for a 2/2 human detective that reads, whenever an opponent sacrifices an artifact, Vengeful Tracker deals 2 damage to them. So, base cost 2 for a 2/2 is fine. It is, it's a grizzly bear, right? But the text is really where the card has its strength, because in a set that is going to have a lot of investigate, a lot of clue tokens running around, punishing your opponent for utilizing those clue tokens to draw cards. I love this thing in Commander because of the mere treasure presence. So I think it forces your opponent, if they take a turn off, to deal with it by killing it. That's okay. Otherwise, if they're going to be burning treasures or artifacts or whatever else, it's going to punish them for it. And so I think this card has a lot of utility to it. It's a fine play. It's low cost. It's easy to get out before they start doing their thing. And that's what I think is going to make this card pretty darn viable. So Vengeful Tracker, pretty sweet uncommon. The number 9 card on my list is World Soul's Rage. So this is a sorcery, and it's 1 green, 1 red, plus X. And it says World Soul's Rage deals X damage to any target. Put up to X land cards from your hand and or graveyard onto the battlefield tap. So this is a kind of a theme of this set. There's a lot of cards that take 2 colors and they do 2 things, right? We're getting like a reprint of Lightning Helix, right? So that is traditionally that's Lightning Bolt plus Healing Salve, and it's just a beautifully designed card. There's a lot of cards like that in this set. In this case, World Soul's Rage gives you 2 things, right? It gives you a direct damage spell, and it also gives you a ramp spell. I like a couple of things about this card. One, I like the fact that it says any target, because one of the dangers that if it was just targeted removal for creatures is if the creature is no longer a valid target, I think the spell would fizzle. So I like the fact that it's any target, so you can go face with it if you're trying to get to the ramp portion of the card. And I also like that it's land cards from your hand and or the graveyard onto the battlefield tap. So it makes for a really nice ramp spell. Now, it's a Gruul spell, right? Because you get the direct damage plus the green portion is the ramp. I'm not quite sure where this card fits best yet. Is it good in a Naya Commander build where I'm trying to ramp? Is it good in dinos where I might be using land tax or other things to stack my hand with lands? And that's what's going to help me ramp them on the battlefield. I'm not quite sure yet, but I just love the utility of this card. The fact that it's doing 2 things. It can be used for creature removal. It can be used for the ramp portion. Maybe you're even getting that beautiful 2-for-1, which is, what you're really trying to get out of it. So I'm intrigued by this card. I definitely intend to try it out. And again, just a really neat card design. The next card on my list today is Anzrag's Rampage. This is a 5-mana red sorcery. It's 3 colorless and 2 red, and it says destroy all artifacts you don't control, then exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts that were put into the graveyards from the battlefield this turn. You may put a creature card exiled this way onto the battlefield. It gains haste. Return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So, to me, a lot of the comp here is Vandal Blast, right? So Vandal Blast, most of the time, yes, you can use it as targeted removal, but honestly, most of the time you're using it for the overload. And in this case, if you're comparing it to the overload of Vandal Blast, to me this is basically a strictly better version. In response, if you're blowing up a bunch of your opponent's treasures, you're probably going to sacrifice them so you don't get that portion of it. But if you're getting signets and soul rings and mana crypts and whatever else, Then you're getting to exile the top X cards of your library and basically being able to put down a creature for free. That's pretty sweet, right? You can pair that with a lot of things. You're getting an ETB from the creature. You're getting an attack trigger from the creature if that's applicable. You know, for me, like a card that might come into play that's really mean is if I can get an Archon of Cruelty into play. Obviously, that's 8 artifacts, but, you know, that's really living the dream there. I love the fact that this is one-sided, so it only negatively impacts your opponents. And again, you're getting a creature out of it. You're getting card advantage out of it because if, you know, at the end of the turn, if that creature isn't removed, it's going to go back to your hand anyway. So pretty sweet card. I think I definitely see this card being a big commander card, and I will be slotting it into a couple of decks and trying it out. The next card on my list today at number 7 is Outrageous Robbery. This is a black instant that costs 2 black mana plus X. And it says target opponent exiles the top X cards of their library face down. You may look at and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. If you cast a spell this way, you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast it, right? So now we've had spells in the past where you could play your opponent's cards. Now the new thing is that you can spend mana of any type, so it makes the card much more versatile. You don't have to worry about, what if they're playing green or white? So you can just spend the mana and it's whatever you need it to be, right? This to me feels like it's actually a constructed playable card as well. I could see it seeing standard play. We've seen cards like Siphon Insight see Fringe play before, and the fact that this is a instant spell that allows you to do X spells of your X cards of your opponent's library seems incredibly strong. I think I could see it like in a Dimir control shell, something along those lines. And from a commander standpoint, with tutors obviously being just an abundant portion of commander, right? I really think this is a really neat trick in response to someone's Mystical Tutor or Enlightened Tutor or even a Vampiric Tutor, something along those lines. That card goes to the top of their library, and if they don't have a way to instantly draw it, they're just doing it on end step, thinking that, hey, this is going to be the card I draw. You can respond with Outrageous Robbery by exiling that card, keeping it away, not only keeping it from your opponent, but also then thieving it for yourself and allowing you to use that card anytime. Really, really sweet card that I think has a lot of utility to it. So I'm definitely going to try it out myself. And yeah, really neat card. Did I mention that there were strong uncommons in the set? Next up at number 6, I have Insidious Roots. So this is a enchantment that costs 1 black and 1 green mana to cast. And it says, creature tokens you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color. Whenever 1 or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 0/1 green plant creature token, then put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control. Holy moly. So a lot to unpack here. So first of all, giving any creature tokens you have, the ability to tap for any color mana is obviously extremely versatile. Now, specific to this set, right, we know that we have collect evidence as a form of mechanic of the set. So the ability to remove cards from your graveyard or remove a creature card from your graveyard is actually pretty easy to do in this set because of the collect evidence mechanic, which means that you're going to be able to trigger the Insidious Roots to create a 0/1 plant and then put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then again, that's for each plant, or for each plant you control gets a +1/+1 counter. So the first time you do it, you're getting a 1/2 plant. Then that plant is going to get become a 2/3 the next time you put counters on it. I think this card is really, really cool to build around in Commander. It has, obviously big token implications. It's, again, extremely versatile with the mana, and I think that, the ability to remove 1 creature at a time and actually just trigger this over and over again is sweet. It instantly got me thinking about Avenger of Zendikar again as well, as a card that I wouldn't mind pairing it with. So Insidious Roots is really, really neat. I can't wait to try it out. And yeah, there we go. So we've now hit the top 5 of our list, and at number 5 I have Druid's Charm. This is a green instant that costs 3 green mana to cast. I like that this is a callback to Modern Horizons Archmage's Charm as part of that cycle. That excites me. Like, I love that Wizards does this now, where they'll take cycles of cards and complete them over various sets at different times. I think that's really sweet because, in the theory, that means in the future that we're going to get a red charm, a black charm, and a white charm as well. But as far as Druid's Charm is concerned, right? So it says choose one. Search your library for a creature or land card and reveal it. Put it onto the battlefield tapped if it's a land, otherwise put it in your hand, then shuffle. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control, or exile target artifact or enchantment. Really, really good card, right? So versatility wise, so you can use it as ramp, right? Because you can go get a land and put it on the battlefield tap. By the way, it just says land. It doesn't say forest or basic land or anything like that. It just says land. So you can go and get your best land, whether that's Field of the Dead or Valakut or something along those lines, right? And put it on the battlefield tapped. And it also ramps because it doesn't count as your 1 land per turn. Or you can go get that creature card. I personally have like an Indominus Rex commander deck where having a good creature in my hand, to discard to that card is really useful. It doesn't necessarily have to be onto the battlefield. The +1/+1 counter on target creature you control is effective because it acts as a bite spell and not a fight spell, so you don't have to worry about giving up your creature to deal the damage there. And then, of course, exiling, not just destroying, but exiling target artifact or enchantment, I think is huge because we have cards like the One Ring running around, whether it's Commander or Modern or something along those lines. The ability to exile an artifact like a One Ring, which is otherwise indestructible, is really, really important. So I love the versatility of this card. I love that they're bringing the cycle and they're continuing the cycle of the charms. And I think this card is going to see some play in a couple of different formats. So the number 4 card on my list today, and the first appearance of a mythic, is Undergrowth Recon. This is a green enchantment that costs 1 colorless and 2 green mana, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So, we have other effects. We call it Crucible effects, right? Crucible Overworlds, where you can play cards out of your graveyard. And this card seems a little bit more limited at first glance, right? Because the land you return from your graveyard to the battlefield is tapped. But one of the things I would point out is it doesn't count as your 1 land per turn. So the land that you're pulling, presumably some sort of fetch land or something along those lines, right? It comes in a battlefield tap, but it still doesn't count as your 1 land for the turn. Unlike Crucible, where if you play a land out of your graveyard, yes, it does come into the battlefield untapped, but it also counts as your 1 land per turn. On the surface, I think the most innocent use of this card would be using it for like the Capenna lands that come into the battlefield, and then it automatically sacrifices, and then you can go use it to find a basic land of one of the 3 types that each one allows you to find, and then it comes into battlefield tap. So with that card playing those cards, you don't really need to worry about it coming into the battlefield untapped, because when it comes in the battlefield, it automatically sacrifices itself and then allows you to go fetch a land, which allows you to ramp and, of course, kind of thin your deck along the way. There's also like a really mean version of this card where you're using it with things like strip mines and wastelands, and you're rotating those. And if you're using things like Amulet or Spelunking or something along those lines, you don't worry about them coming in a battlefield tap. And so you're getting your 1 land per turn, and then you're also just repeatedly playing a strip mine or a wasteland out of the graveyard. Not sure how much your commander group will love you for that, but it is a use for the card. So I think this card has some other practical uses, and I definitely want to give it a glance in a few different styles, and we'll see how it plays out. But it is a card that I'm excited to try out. The number 3 card on my list is Trostani 3 Whispers. So this is a 3 mana creature spell that costs 1 green, 1 white, and then a green-white hybrid for 4/4. Right away, power toughness to mana ratio is quite good at 3 for a 4/4. It's a legendary creature dryad, and it's got 3 different activated abilities. One is 1 green, 1 colorless for target creature gains death touch until end of turn, and then you've got a hybrid green-white for target creature gains vigilance until end of turn, and then the last one is 2 colorless and a white. Target creature gains double strike until end of turn. So it's target creature, right? So you can give it to any of your creatures in the battle, any of these abilities, giving it a lot of flexibility. It can kind of stay back and just be the general while all of your other creatures swing, and then give them the abilities as needed. Or it can be a 1 creature wrecking crew, right? Where it gives itself death touch and double strike and vigilance. Now, my small complaint here is that I wish that it was trample instead of vigilance, but I understand why it isn't, given the double strike and death touch abilities, because with death touch and any sort of first strike ability, you just need to do 1 point of damage and then the rest will trample over. So I get why it's vigilance, right? But again, the versatility here, the power toughness is exceptional, and the fact that for essentially 3/6 mana, it can give itself 3 different abilities that is an unbeatable creature in combat is really, really cool. So I'm interested. I think this probably plays in a few different archetypes. I'm not sure how much constructed play it will see, because green-white doesn't seem very strong in like standard right now, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. The number 2 card on my list is a darn good one in Judith, Carnage, Connoisseur. So at first glance, I honestly couldn't believe this card was made. It's a 5 mana 3/4, so it's 3 for plus a black and a red for a 3/4. So like not the most mana efficient creature, right? Like in 2024, it's not exciting paying 5 for a 3/4. So clearly it must do some other things. And it sure does. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, choose one. The first one is that spell gains Death Touch and Lifelink. And that's the real winner there. But there's also another option of create a 2/2 red imp creature token with when this creature dies, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. That's not nothing, right? But the fact that it makes your instant or sorcery spells, gives them Death Touch and Lifelink is a huge ability. Taking your lightning bolts and giving it lifelink. Oh, look, it's a lightning helix. And now it doesn't matter what the creature's power toughness is, barring it having it indestructible, it's going to die because you gave the spell Death Touch. It makes things like all those spells that deal 1 damage to each creature a board wipe. It makes a Blasphemous Act a board wipe that is also going to gain you an insane amount of life because Blasphemous Act is going to have lifelink and Death Touch. It is expensive commander to bring out, right? And presumably if you do some sort of board wipe, it probably kills Judith in the process as well, although there's ways around that indeed. But so, the commander tax may add up, but if you pull off something like a Judith into Blasphemous Act and gain an insane amount of life, I'm not sure how much it's going to matter at that point. A really interesting card. I was thinking about it as a Rakdos commander, obviously, which is one of my favorite color pairings, and I haven't built that deck yet, so very possibly my next commander in Judith, Carnage, Connoisseur. So the number 1 card for Murders at Karlov Manor that I'm most excited about is Massacre Girl, Known Killer. And while I strongly considered putting Judith as my number 1, I really fell in love with the card design of this particular card. So let's talk about it a little bit more. Massacre Girl is a 4 for a 4/4. That's 2 colorless and 2 black. Legendary creature, human assassin. It's got menace, and then creatures you control have wither, which means they deal damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, if its toughness was less than 1, draw a card. So presumably your creatures are dealing damage in the form of -1/-1 counters, and then if they kill another creature, you get to draw a card off of that. But it just says that when a creature an opponent controls dies, if it had toughness less than 1, draw a card. And black's got a ton of ways to give creatures minus toughness, right? Through -X/-X. I love that this gives Dismembers and Tragic Slips and Meat Hook Massacres and Toxic Deluges like a different component where they're cantripping, and now it's replacing itself if you're just using targeted removal with a Tragic Slip or something like that. But if you're using a board wipe, you're drawing a card for each one of those. It also pairs very well with the Massacre Girl from War of the Spark, which is a sort of board wipe in and of itself. And so for each one of those creatures that died with less than 1 toughness, you get to draw a card off of it. So there's a lot of cool abilities with it. It replaces itself, giving your creatures wither. That also means that if your creatures have the ability to do damage, it just says damage. It doesn't necessarily say combat damage. So if they have other ways to do it through activated abilities, that would count as a way to then kill creatures and kill opponent creatures and then draw you a card. Really sweet card design, like it a lot, and can't wait to try it out. So that's my top 10 from this set, but now I want to hear from you. Drop me some comments. Let me know some of the cards from this set that you cannot wait to crack open and throw in some of your decks and what excites you about them. Can't wait to hear from you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, do me a favor. If you're not subscribed already, hit the subscribe button for me, hit the like button for me, and by all means, drop me some comments. Appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much, everybody, and have fun at pre-release weekend.